Welcome to our Noteflight Learn Content Library webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have the opportunity here to talk about Noteflight Learn and really introduce content libraries, which have been available for about 6 weeks now, but this is a great opportunity to show them off and talk about what functionality we have. So let's jump right in. If you have any questions, please put it in the questions field and I will go ahead and answer those as soon as we're done. So Noteflight Learn content libraries. First of all, Noteflight Learn, just to review, is an online community. It's your own private site for teachers and students. So you get your own website, all students and teachers log into that site, and you have additional groups to organize students by classes or ensemble or section or voice or any combination you would like. So groups allow you to group content and to group students, so it's really easy to share a score or an activity with a group of students. On top of that, Noteflight Learn is web-based, so it's accessible by every child, every score, every device. So you can access it on Chromebooks, iPads, Mac or PC computer, even on your phone. So it's everywhere. It's an ideal platform for learning music in a school setting or in another setting with an ensemble because you can share and exchange musical ideas on the web right inside your account. On top of that, every student in Noteflight Learn gets a full notation editor. So what sets this apart is it's a completely full creative tool. Every score is adaptable, it's full notation, and you can create and adapt and listen to and interact with all of your music. Also, we offer activity templates. This is another feature we'll talk about later, where any score can be turned into an activity where when you share it with students, when students open that score, it creates a custom copy automatically. So this is great for activities for theory or composition that require student completion, where you could just share a score and the student opens it and all of a sudden you have a record of every single score. But also for performance exercises and sharing content from content libraries, which we'll talk about here in a second, and that you could share these as activity templates and the students get their own copy of that score automatically, and then you have access to all of the students' copies in one place. Another great feature in Noteflight Learn, which we'll talk about tonight, is audio recording. So you can actually record on Mac, PC, or Chromebook directly into a Noteflight score, and as you can see, the waveforms will appear right behind the staff. So now you could share a score, and instead of using Noteflight notation instrument playback, you could actually record your audio and give students an example of what something is supposed to sound like, or use it for performance assessment, where students can open a musical score in Noteflight, record themselves singing or performing it, and you would have a copy of that. So when you think about the combination of activity templates and audio recording, Noteflight becomes a really, really valuable tool for performance feedback and assessment. Every score has a whole area of comments, so collaboration and feedback is built into every musical score, which is another reason why it's ideal for learning music, both to compose, create, and perform music. So when we think of all this, now the question is, how can we get the content that we're working on in schools? How can we get the published content? So we're excited to announce that with all this functionality in Noteflight Learn, we now have subscriptions available for content libraries where you can subscribe for an additional fee per student that they can have access to hundreds of pieces of music. Now we offer 5 content libraries. There's one for band, choir, orchestra, piano, and guitar. And again, these libraries are constantly growing. We're constantly adding new repertoire to them, and these represent some of those popular scores that are available today. We'll talk later at the end of this about how to purchase and how they work. So from here, let's actually jump in and take a look at the live site. So here's your content library page. Every single Noteflight Learn user has this libraries tab right at the top. So whether you're on a free demo or whether you have a Noteflight Learn site, everyone has the libraries icon, and you can click on this and come to this page, and you can actually preview and view all of the content in the libraries. So we'll just go through. We have a band library that has, I think, 80 or so pieces at this point. We offer, you can search by keyword, which could be composer, name of the piece. You can also sort by opening key and even the grade levels. We have a choir library. We include multiple voicings of the same title in the choir library, so you'll see that if there's 3 different arrangements of All of Me, you get all 3 different voicings. We have an orchestra library, piano, and guitar. So within each of these libraries, of course, you can sort and preview, but then you can actually check out and use this repertoire digitally inside Noteflight Learn with all of the other features in Noteflight. Now, these libraries are not printable. They're only used for digital, but you can, once you have access to the library, every user who has library access can interact with this musical content any way inside of Noteflight Learn except for printing. So the way you go about this is you actually assign which of your students have access to each library. So if you have a band class and you want to purchase library access for 20 students, you would go into your members and you would simply add students. And here I'm selecting current students I have in my Noteflight Learn site, and it's just as easy as clicking on and say who I want to have access. And I hit OK, and now any of these students that log in their account now have access to the full band library. On top of that, I can share scores with them, they can make copies of the rep, they can adapt it, they can do anything they want with it digitally. So that's one thing that's important here is you do not have to purchase content for every student inside of Noteflight Learn. You can have a school with 200 Noteflight Learn users, and you can have 34 band libraries for the 34 band students, and you could have 40 choir libraries for the 40 choir students. And you simply go into each library and just assign who you would like to have access. So there we go. Now, let's take a look at what a library piece looks like. So I've pulled up a preview. Forgive me, I have this floating panel that you can't see, but I can. I've pulled up a preview of a band library piece. Now, inside band and orchestra, I do want to point out that we have 2 options for playback. You can, of course, play the Noteflight playback, which is notation sounding playback. Or we actually have links to reference audio where available, and they're available both in the side panel and on top. So in this case, if we have recordings from the publishers of a professional ensemble doing it, we link that out for you so you can actually get right to the professional band recording. So anytime reference audio is available, we actually show you that right in the header, and it always follows that score in the side panel. So we have that for all of our band and orchestra rep because we have reference audio available for all of that. Now, notice I'm just previewing the score now. I have to actually check out a copy. So the way you work with content libraries is you copy it once you have access, and you bring that into your own Noteflight account. So once I check out a copy, it'll just show up right in my account as one of my scores. And as long as I have access to that, or as long as the student has access to that library, they will be able to interact with any version of this score. So now, one of the first things that we think about is, students have never had access to a full score before. So some of the things you could do with a content library, well, first of all, have the opportunity to do score study and score analysis as part of a homework assignment. And this could be whole class. You could put this up on a projector, or you could have students do this as an assignment. One thing I like to do is use colors. So in this case, I may have students find the melody and color the melody lines. Let's say they'll be green. And so they actually have to figure out who does have the melody in this particular piece. And maybe, harmony to melody could be another color. Maybe that would be blue. And students can go through and find those lines as well. And then maybe supporting material like these glorious half notes that all of our low instruments get to play, and they love doing so much. We can now highlight that. So that's one thing we could do with, is just having these exercises where students can view and interact with the content as well. Now, these are full scores, but using Noteflight, you have the instruments panel available at all times. So if you'd like to see an individual part, you can simply select that part, and it automatically generates that particular part of the score. Notice I can even make my own version and just select combinations of parts I want to see. So if I want to see a little brass version, well, now I've just made a brass version. And with every score in Noteflight, you can save copies as much as you need. So I can even call this Dragonfire Brass, if I want to change the name. I can go ahead and save my score, and then I can just copy this and create another version of Dragonfire where I can again make more edits. So whenever you check out a piece of digital content, and actually with any score in Noteflight, you have the choice of just manipulating it and saving all sorts of different versions. So I could bring this back in. Now this is my new copy. I can come back to showing all instruments once again. So you could set these up for students and share it with them, or students can go in and just select which parts they want to see. So if I was to play trumpet, I may view the trumpet part. Now, I'm still listening to the entire score playback. I'm just viewing the trumpet part. We have a separate mixer panel that allows you to customize what you want to hear versus what you want to see. And this is really valuable, so now you can set up all sorts of performance exercises and performance tracks. And we'll do this with some choir rep here in a second. But in this case, I can see all the Noteflight tracks, and I can even decide maybe I want to play along with everything else, but I don't want to hear the trumpet part. So I can turn the trumpet part off, and I'm playing my part along with everything else. Or I can switch that up, and I could solo the trumpet part, and that way I'm just playing along with my particular part, and I can listen to just the trumpet part, like that. So that's one way you may use this. And again, if I was to save this as just the trumpet part with just the trumpet audio, I can just save this score as Dragonfire Trumpet, save it, and if I want to do a different version for different students, I can just make a copy and do it again. So again, you can, once you have access to this digital content, you can use it as much as you want inside of your Noteflight account, and you can share it with any other user who also has access to digital content. So let's move on and actually look at a choir piece. So I've checked out, this is another preview, right? So I'm looking in the choir library, and I've selected this piece, and now I've gone ahead and checked it out. So now this is it in my account. You can see I have the full editor. Now this is my score. Now this is a SAB version with a solo. So let's say I want to make a rehearsal track for my choir. What I could do is I would do the same thing with the instruments or sound panel. In this case, it starts off with solo and piano, and then later the other parts come in and add to that. Well, if I want to maybe make a rehearsal track for the soloist, maybe I just want to view the solo part. So I could solo this, and then I can go into my mixer, and I can solo the solo, and now I would just hear the solo part along with everything else. Or I can go back to play all and mute the solo, and now I have a practice part where I can see my part, I can sing, but I could hear everything else. So you have all of these different options. Maybe I want to hear maybe I want to see the vocal parts, but I don't really need to see the piano part necessarily. I just want to see all the vocal parts in the score, and they'll come in at measure 21. And you see how the hidden measures start showing up for the score. But I want to sing along with the piano. So I could do the same thing. I could go in and solo my piano background and just view my parts. And again, it's up to you. So now I can save this as a null version, and now I would have my own version of all of me where I can listen to the piano and sing along with the vocal parts. So you have full flexibility to manipulate and use these scores however you need to help learn parts. Now, audio recording. This is actually really cool, because let's go back to Dragonfire and think about doing a performance assignment or an assessment. So there's two things you could do with audio recording. There's probably a whole bunch of things you do with audio recording, but one of which is to give students demonstration tracks. So for choir, notation playback will never sing to you. It's never going to sing phrases. It's never going to have proper diction and breathing. But you could actually go in and sing this part as a demonstration for your students and record yourself doing that, and it would give them the ability to have something to sing along with. Or you can empower your students and have your section leaders of each section sing the demo tracks for all of the students. And all of this is capable in Noteflight Learn. You would simply share a score with a group of students, have the section leaders go in and record their individual parts, and then you would share that score with all of the students, and they would have access to a musical score and they would listen to their section leaders singing it for them. This is a great way to practice along. So I can demo recording a little bit with, let's go back to Dragonfire. I'm going to pull up just the trumpet part. But in fact, I'm going to go into my mixer and make sure I'm hearing everything, which I am. And I'm going to go into record mode. Now, fair warning, I am on a webinar, so I'm not really sure if the mic's going to be able to do double duty with doing this webinar and recording, but we'll see what happens. So in this case, I've gone into record mode. It automatically gives me my parts and my track list. Notice all the tracks are Noteflight tracks because right now these are just like Noteflight notation instrument playback, so kind of generic. You can also see all the parts. Notice you do have a mixer, so you can mix volumes and adjust the levels of these parts if you choose to. Now, when you're recording in Noteflight, by default, the part you're recording is muted because most people don't want to hear that part. So the trumpet part will not play back, but of course I can turn that setting off. I can also turn my metronome on and off. By default, the metronome is on. So let's actually start recording and see what happens. So now notice there's my audio and there's my recording. And when you go to tracks, you'll see under trumpet that John Malinzak has recorded a track. So you can imagine how we could do this as a collaborative score where every student could record their part and you could actually go in and play back and choose which students want to play it back. You could create group assignments where you assign a score to a group of, one student on each instrument and they have to go in and make their own recordings and each play their part. And again, students can do this at home or at school from any computer or Chromebook right into Noteflight. So there's all sorts of cool opportunities here. Also, having your principal player go in and record the parts for the students is very valuable, both in band, choir, orchestra, and having multiple students record. So you could set these scores up however you would like. So let's actually talk about that. Let's say I've done demonstration audio for my students, and I want to share it with them. So I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to share this score with back to my group of students. So I'll go back to edit mode. You see I still see that there's recording in here. And I'll open my Connect panel, and I will share this with a group. And I can actually share this with my band. Now, very important here, this is a content library score. This is published content. So the only students that will be able to access this score are ones that are part of that content library. So I have a group of band students, and so I would set up all of my band students with content so we can share this. You can move students in and out of content libraries as well. So if you pay for 30 libraries for 30 students, you can move 30 students in, take 10 students out, put 10 different students in. You can move them around. Just know that as soon as you remove a student from library access, they cannot open any score that's previously been shared with them. So it actually controls that access the whole time. So in this case, I've made a demonstration track. I've shared it with my beginning band, and now all the students in beginning band that have access to content can now see and play along with this score, or they could record their own part. I can set it as an activity template and have them each record their part, and you would have copies of that. So lots of options here. Now, the other thing is, adaptation. So I've pulled up another copy of a piano library score, and I'm going to go ahead and check this out and make it mine. So it pulls it into my Noteflight account. And of course, we all know this one. But what if we want to try this in a different key? What if we decide that maybe we want to try this up a couple steps? So in Noteflight, I usually just shift select up a key. So let's try this in A. So I've just moved the notes up to A, and at the same time, I'm going to go in and change my key signature. And now we've created a new version in a different key. So especially with beginning players, taking a familiar melody and trying it in different keys, I've actually adapted this very quickly. And I can save this, and I can make all sorts of different variations of this. In fact, this is now a copy. So if you have younger students just focus on a certain section, well, you could very easily just create a copy of a score where you just take out the sections that you don't want them to have access to. So you could take this out. Oops, I'm playing back. And you could delete a whole section of scores, and now I could create an opportunity for them just to hear and see just a certain section. Or if you want to create something to get students started, you could take out one hand and just give them the melody. Again, you can make all the adaptations you want here. You can always undo. And you can always save multiple copies. So if you make an adaptation to a score and you save it, you can always go back into the content library and check it out again. So I'm not sure where my minuet in G is, but I bet it's down here in alphabetical order. So you kind of see, so there it is. If I want to check it out again from my library, I'll just go check it out again. And now I have another copy that's clean, and I can make more adaptations. So notice if I go to my scores, and let me refresh my page, all of those scores that I just checked out now show up as my scores in my library, and I can interact with them like I can anything else in Noteflight. Notice the icon on the left has this sort of open book picture instead of the note. This lets me know that it is a content library score, so it helps you keep track of what's there and what you have available. So we have some more resources that we'll be sending out after this to everyone who registered, including our blog post on talking about specifics of content libraries and just some ideas of what you can do. Again, we talked about having students use it as a learning tool, use the live audio recording for performance assessment and for providing model performances. Collaborative recording projects, again, with any digital score in Noteflight, you could share it with a group of students. They can record, they can share it back. So really empower the students to be able to share and comment. Also, peer review. Another thing is that if another student wants to come in and record, recording can be a performance, but recording can also be comments on someone's performance. So if I was a teacher and I was grading 30 performance assessments, I may go in and just hit record and listen to the student's performance and give them recorded feedback right there. Because really, first of all, it's a lot easier than typing everything up, let's not lie, but how cool is it for a student to go home and get their teacher like talking to them and actually see it in the musical score and hear that feedback while they're actually watching the notes go by. All of this is possible right there in Noteflight. So that's another great use of this. You know, having students do score study, this is another big part too. They've never had access. So any assignment we can do for students to understand how music's put together and what the melody is really valuable. Also, use these as composition assignments. Take the melody of one piece and work on, you know, how would you write it? What would you set it to? Or, you know, make different versions or theme and variations or something like that. Again, students have full access to the library, so free exploration is something that's very important to us. We want students to have access to something they can pull up a repertoire for choir, band, orchestra, piano, guitar, and just play and have a body of music that they can just play right from their iPad or their computer and just have fun and engage in the music and try it in different keys or whatever they want to do. And you can transpose repertoire as well, and you can adapt it as needed. So let's actually talk for a minute about how you can add these. One of the great things that we have done at Noteflight as well is we sort of have this new commerce area where you can actually make instantaneous changes to your plan. So if you're so inspired already in the first 24 minutes and you'd like to purchase content libraries, again, if you're a current customer or a new customer, when you go to our purchase page, you can actually add libraries at any time in your subscription. In fact, you can add more users at any time to your subscription. You can make instantaneous changes. So if you're a current customer and you log in, it's going to show you what you currently have, and it's going to give you your renewal date. So you would select Start Immediately because I want to make this change and have it right now. And let's say I want to increase my users up to 50. And let's say I want to add a choir library. And I'm going to add that for 22 students. So it gives you the individual prices. It lets you know what your new plan total is. And then it's going to prorate the difference based on your renewal rate, your renewal date. So you can go ahead and just make these changes at any time. You can pay by credit card, or you can actually just pay by purchase order. you can go in, you can get a quote right here, and so you can just quote this price. Or if you have a PO, you can just put it right here, and you hit this button, and magically you now have access to this right away, and we'll just send you an invoice. So you can change this at any time. You can add users and add people to content at any time throughout your subscription. So I'd encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity. At this point, I'm happy to entertain any questions we have, and I appreciate you taking the time to check out content libraries.